Lu Mu Yen used silk mist steps at its fastest and arrived in the cave where everyone had rested before. The battle wasn't over yet, and at this time, piles of ice-krite serpent corpses were everywhere. The students were practically exhausted as they dealt with the last wave of small serpents. She quickly moved to Lu Mu Bei's side when the others weren't paying attention and waved her whip to help him behead a wave of small serpents that surrounded him. Lu Mu Bei had taken the candy, that was from Lan Si, earlier with Lu Mu Yen, so he still had more than half of his elemental energy left, which meant, compared to the others, he had it much easier. Only after seeing his younger sister return safely did his hovering heart gradually fall back into place. Done? Lu Mu Bei asked Lu Mu Yen telepathically. Lu Mu Yen and Lu Mu Bei killed the last batch of ice-krite serpents back to back. Yep, it's done. The battles of the rest were also coming to an end. Several students had practically exhausted their elemental energy, and it was thanks to the help of Lan Si and the several teachers that they could survive the swarm of serpents. When the last ice-krite serpent was killed, whether it was the Empire Academy trial students or the Imperial Family trial team, most of them were sitting on the ground panting and many were more or less injured too. Yunzi Mo walked straight to Lu Mu Yen with a touch of complexity in his eyes and asked, "You gave them those powdered drugs? So what if it's me?" Lu Mu Yen knew that Yunzi Mo and Lan Si had both noticed that she had left earlier, but she couldn't consider too much at the time. Though, if Yunzi Mo mentioned it now, she inevitably would experience some trouble. Yunzi Mo's eyes darkened, fell silent, then faintly said, "Nothing." Then he turned directly around and walked not far away to sit and meditate to recover his elemental energy. A sliver of surprise slipped past Lu Mu Yan's heart. Yunzi Mo's brain wasn't ill, was it? But this was fine too. It saved her from having to explain to everyone. Lan Si looked at Yunzi Mo thoughtfully, then asked Lu Mu Yen, "Do you still have the powder drug?" Hearing Lan Si's question, everyone in their cave cast their gazes towards Lu Mu Yen, and many people held complex emotions in their eyes. If it weren't for the powder that Lu Mu Bai and the others scattered that temporarily paralyzed those waves of Tier 3 and 4 ice-krite serpents, they could still be fighting bitterly right now, or there could have even been some casualties. The powdered drug's effect was truly strong. Putting the fact that it was useful against Tier 4 demonic beasts aside, it could even be used in group attacks. If everyone carried some on them, next time, even if they encountered a group of demonic beast attacks, they'd still have confidence in escaping. There are still some more. Lu Mu Yen didn't hesitate and took out a part of the powdered drug she had in her interspatial ring and gave it to Lan Si. Since knowing that she was coming to the glacial mountain range, she had equipped herself with a lot of sleeping powder that she refined. Now that Lan Si asked for it for the other students, she would still give him this face. What's more, in the first segment where everyone traveled together, they would experience both glory and loss as one. Lan Si nodded with a smile, "Thank you. I'll report to the principal to compensate you after returning to the Empire." "No need." Lu Mu Yen smiled indifferently. These powders weren't worth a lot of money, so they might as well be used to buy people's hearts. Lan Si raised his eyebrow and with a gentle smile again, "Young Miss Lu sure is generous. Then we won't be courteous." Lu Mu Yen rolled her eyes at him and cursed secretly, "Fox." Lan Si asked Ji Xian to redistribute the powdered drug that he obtained from Lu Mu Yen to everyone who participated in the trial. Put these powdered drugs away well. There are a lot of demonic beast packs in the glacial mountain range. If you meet them again, this is also a means of saving your life. Yes. After everyone answered, some of them even looked at Lu Mu Yen apologetically. Their previous attitude towards her was too arbitrary. Then Lan Si and the several instructors picked through the piles of ice-krite serpent corpses in the cave, dug out their crystal cores, and gave everyone a share. Only after taking a rest in the cave for the night, when everyone's physical strength and elemental energy returned to their peaks, did Lan Si and Yunji lead them on their way. Along the way, many people's attitudes towards Lu Mu Yen had changed a lot, and from time to time, some people would even strike up a conversation with her. "We've arrived at the periphery, let's take a break first. Once we enter here, we'll be in the world where Tier 4 demonic beasts roam. Their cultivation base is similar to yours, so be vigilant at all times." When they arrived at a place where green plants grew, fresh flowers intertwined, and a forest that grew vigorously, Lan Si ordered everyone to rest. Not all places in the glacial mountain range were ice mountains. There was only daylight here, but in some places where the sun shone all year round, all seasons were practically like spring. After resting for a while, they continued on their way. Lan Si made a stop gesture, exchanged a glance with Yunji, then handed the students over to the several other instructors, before the two leapt in that direction. Lu Mu Yen looked in that direction and telepathically spoke to Mo Yen, "Did the people ahead meet demonic beasts?" It wasn't far ahead, and if she spread her mental energy, then she could find out what was happening there, but there was a demonic sense that was super strong, where with one casual sweep, the demonic beast could know what was occurring 1,000 li away, so she naturally knew to put it to good use. A group of humans and a demonic beast pack encountered each other, but it was solved quickly. The strength of that group is much stronger than your group. Mo Yen laid on Lu Mu Yan's shoulder and replied lazily. Lu Mu Yen stroked her chin, and the corner of her lips rose into an arc. The group of people ahead should undoubtedly be the pupils of the 10 distinguished clans. Not long after, Lan Si sent a signal to continue ahead, so Ji Xian rushed over with everyone. After passing through the woods, one saw many Tier 3 and 4 demonic beast corpses lying in the open ground. "You guys come to rest as well for a bit." Lan Si pointed to a clean, open space to let the students of Yanzhou Kingdom rest, while he, himself, stood with two middle-aged men to chat, seeming to be acquaintances. Lu Mu Yen swept the two groups of people and a smile rose in her eyes, but she didn't take the initiative to step forward. When she walked to the place Lan Si designated, and just as she was about to sit, there was a sound of surprise that entered her ears. Mu Yen. When Yi Qinghan sat in his place to rest, he had heard that the students who participated in the trial competition from Yanzhou Kingdom also came. He only thought to glance over casually, but didn't expect to see the beautiful, otherworldly, white-clothed woman in the crowd. Lu Mu Yen stopped in her steps, turned her head, and smiled charmingly. Qinghan. The familiar greeting between the two surprised everyone in the woods, especially the few women who had been sitting in the clearing as they looked at Lu Mu Yen with dislike in their eyes. Yi Qingyan patted the young woman beside him, then they stood up and walked towards Lu Mu Yen. Mu Yen, long time no see. Yi Qingyan was still dressed in his dark patterned black robe with a rare smile on his handsome face. Lu Mu Yen nodded, her eyes dyed with a smile. Long time no see. Elder brother, is she the elder sister Mu Yen you spoke of? The sweet-looking and petite girl who stood beside Yi Qinghan asked with a smile. Yes, she's Lu Mu Yen. Yi Qinghan's voice carried a bit of pampering, then introduced to Lu Mu Yen, this is my little sister, Yi Qinglu. Elder sister Mu Yen, you're so beautiful. Yi Qinglu blinked at Lu Mu Yen with a natural familiarity. She didn't know why, but just like this woman, that her elder brother spoke of constantly, at first glance. Qinglu is also very beautiful. Lu Mu Yen nodded and smiled cordially. The friendliness of the girl opposite her didn't appear to be fake, so a sense of intimacy was also birthed unconsciously in Lu Mu Yan's heart. Perhaps this was simply fate. Yi Qinghan was relatively humble, but there was a sense of distance towards everyone. It was difficult to see him reveal a smile from the bottom of his heart to anyone. Yi Qinglu, the little princess of the Yi family, had a very lively and cheerful appearance, but she rarely truly approved of anyone. No one had ever seen her display the intimacy that she did today towards anyone. Many people were puzzled by the attitude of the Yi clan's brother and sister towards Lu Mu Yen. Those who didn't know Lu Mu Yan's identity were all wondering who she was. It was the first time for Xueling and Xianing Xian to see Yi Qinghan display such a gentle side to a woman. In particular, the joy and warm color in his eyes pricked their eyes. Xianing Xian had already found out Lu Mu Yan's identity before. From her point of view, this woman was just a fallen noble. The only thing that made her fear was the mysterious master behind Lu Mu Yen. Originally, she wanted to immediately get rid of Lu Mu Yen, but the other party had the marrow cleansing pill. After the superiors of the 10 distinguished clans received this news, the moment this trial ended, they would definitely go to Yanzhou Kingdom to discuss this matter. The elder of her clan also warned her not to make a move without permission and lose a great opportunity because of something small. Xianing Xian's eyes were grim. After she was warned by the clan, she decided to temporarily let Lu Mu Yen go and wait for the Xian clan to obtain the marrow cleansing pill first before killing her. But now looking at Yi Qinghan's attitude towards Lu Mu Yen, her heart was burning with jealousy. She just wanted to rush up and scratch open that gorgeous face of hers completely. Elder brother Mu Bai, Mu Yen. At this time, several people from the Ling clan also walked over from another direction. The leader was a red-haired young man and a gentle woman in plain clothes. Fei Hao, Fei Li. A warm color flashed across Lu Mu Bai's eyes. Lu Mu Yen also smiled and addressed, elder cousin brother, elder cousin sister. The two of them were precisely the most promising of the younger generation in the Ling clan, Ling Fei Hao and Ling Fei Li. They were Lu Mu Yan's second uncle and third uncle's child respectively. They were 2 years older than her, and they treated her fairly nicely. Towards the rest that followed the two, Lu Mu Yen didn't have a strong impression. She supposed that they were the pupils of the Ling clan who just came to participate in the selection trial and wasn't from the main bloodline. Only when they saw Ling Fei Hao and Ling Fei Li greet Lu Mu Yen, did many talents of the 10 distinguished clans realize her identity. But they still wondered how Yi Qinghan and Lu Mu Yen met. The relationship between the two was obviously not shallow. I've long heard my maternal grandfather say that Mu Yan's terminal meridian's constitution had been eradicated. But it was unexpected that we'd meet in this trial. I hope we can participate in the continental tournament for hegemony together. Ling Fei Hao's sunny and energetic face revealed a lovely dimple. Ling Fei Li beside him glared at him, well, speak of these matters in private. This little boy spoke regardless of occasion. Didn't he see everyone's eyes were cast on them? Let's find a place to have a conversation first. Ling Fei Hao was just too excited to see the Lu brother and sister, so now that he had calmed down, he proposed. Lu Mu Bai nodded and smiled gently at the Yi clan's brother and sister, Mu Yen, you should accompany your friends and have chat. He could see that Yi Qinghan was looking for Lu Mu Yen for something. Although he didn't know how they met, but as long as the other party wasn't malicious, then it was fine. Alright. I'll chat a little with Qinghan and Qinglu. Eldest brother, you guys talk first. Then, Lu Mu Bai and the people from the Ling clan walked to a distant grassy area to sit and chat, while Lu Mu Yan's arm was wrapped around by Qing Les and was pulled under a large tree not far away. Yi Qinghan erected an elemental energy soundproof barrier. Seeing Yi Qinghan's hesitate in speaking, Lu Mu Yen understood. She took Qing Les' hand to take her pulse. Let me take a look at Qing Les' body first. Yi Qinglu was plagued by years of disease, and this time, it was because she had taken a pill the clan's alchemist had refined that could temporarily suppress the fetal poison, that she could follow into the glacial mountain range. She had long heard from her elder brother Nold Lu that Lu Mu Yen had excelling medical skills. Elder brother had even successfully advanced to the Sword King stage because he took the marrow cleansing pill that Lu Mu Yen gifted. So she had long wanted to see the woman they constantly spoke of. Sure enough, she didn't disappoint at first glance today. She had a good impression of this woman who was only a year older than herself. Now that Lu Mu Yen wanted to check her pulse for her illness, she relaxed her body and allowed her to check. After changing Yi Qingle's hand and continued to check her pulse, Lu Muyan's brows furrowed together slightly. Then, after a while, she let go and fell into deep contemplation. Muyan, how is it? Can Qingle's poison be cured? Seeing Lu Muyan furrow her brows, worry couldn't help but rise from Yi Qinghan's heart. Yi Qinglu was more optimistic. Since she was a child, she knew that she might not live past 20 years old, so this time she begged the superiors in the clan to allow her to follow her elder brother to experience the outside world. Elder sister Muyan, I've been living with this chronic illness for years. If there's no solution, then it's also normal. Lu Muyan was just thinking deeply about how to cure Yi Qingle's poison, yet who knew that it'd cause a misunderstanding from the two. She smiled back and said, although the fetal poison in your body is deep, but it hasn't corroded to the internal organs yet. As long as you cure it within a year, then it'll be fine. If we drag the time longer than a year, the fetal poison flowing in your blood will slowly corrode your internal organs, and by then it'll be more troublesome. Then you mean Qinglu could still be saved now? A light burst from Yi Qinghan's eyes. Yi Qinglu froze and a look of hope rose in her eyes as she stared at Lu Muyan, waiting for her answer. Although she had a cheerful and optimistic temperament, but every time the fetal poison erupted within her, she always had the urge to commit suicide. If it weren't for her family, then she would have long been unable to continue to live. Now, if there was a way to completely eradicate the poison from within her body, then it would be the best result for her and her family. Yes, she can be saved. But because the poison had already blended with her blood, it'll be a bit troublesome to deal with. I still need to refine an antidote pill to be used together with the golden needle treatment. Lu Muyan paused, then added, it's just that I think the treatment should be postponed until after this trial is over. Yi Qingle's fetal poison wasn't difficult to solve, it was just troublesome to handle. During the treatment, it also required her to treat Yi Qinglu with needles every day for a month. In the glacial mountain range, they would separate immediately to complete their own trials, so she couldn't be treated. No hurry. I've been like this for so many years, I don't care about waiting a little more. Yi Qinglu was happy. She didn't expect that Lu Muyan really had a way to treat the fetal poison in her body. This made her feel a sense of hope that had never risen in her heart before. Yi Qinghan also revealed some excitement in his eyes, everything's fine as long as it can be cured. Don't worry, I can cure this poison, I promise. Lu Muyan could deeply feel the pain of having a chronic illness. Muyan, a mere thank you is an insufficient response to such a huge favor. Yi Qinghan thought for a while and popped out this sincere sentence. Lu Muyan lowered her head and chuckled, then raised her head and looked at him jokingly, I still haven't treated Qinglu yet, your thanks is too early. I believe you. Yi Qinghan's handsome, sharp and angular face revealed unconditional trust. Since the time they went to the blazing mountain range together, an inexplicable feeling of trust grew in him towards this woman. Elder sister Muyan, I believe you too. Yi Qinglu smiled beautifully, with trust in her eyes. Lu Muyan's eyes were also dyed with a layer of deep warmth. She was very touched by this trust and was happy from the bottom of her heart. Yi Qinglu and Lu Muyan hit it off at first sight. They laughed and chatted for a while, and both felt as if they've met each other far too late. When Yi Qinghan was about to separate from Lu Muyan, he suddenly leaned close to her ear and whispered, the glacial mountain range hasn't been peaceful recently. Be careful when you complete your missions. If you meet people outside of Yanzhou Kingdom and the 10 distinguished clans, try your best to avoid them. Lu Muyan revealed confusion in her eyes, but didn't ask more, nodded and said, alright, you two take care too. Soon, the Yi clan's brother and sister returned to the place where the people of the Yi clan who participated in the trial gathered. Lu Muyan also went to where the Ling clan's people were and sat down. Muyan, you know the brother and sister of the Yi clan? Ling Fei Hao turned his eyes then asked curiously. Lu Muyan said with a smile, yep, we've had some interactions before. You can actually be so close to them, that's amazing. Ling Fei Hao raised a thumb up at Lu Muyan, then said in a whisper, those two siblings are famous for being watertight and they keep their distance from anyone, especially Yi Qinghan, he's exceptionally difficult to befriend. There's such a thing? Lu Muyan remembered that when she first met Yi Qinghan, he definitely felt distant, but afterwards, when they went to the blazing mountain range, that sense of distance gradually faded, and they even became friends with a bit of tacit understanding. She had never felt that it was difficult to approach Yi Qinghan. Ling Fei Hao leaned towards Lu Muyan and said, there are 3 people who are considered the most difficult to approach in the 10 distinguished clans. Do you know which 3? Lu Muyan cooperated with Ling Fei Hao in amusement, I don't know, which 3? Yi Qinghan counts as one. She found that this elder cousin brother of hers was too lively and full of energy. Yep, Yi Qinghan counts as one, and there's 2 other people. Look over at the group of people sitting across from us. The expressionless man sitting on the very edge, wearing a black brocade robe, is the most highly valued genius of the clan ranked number 1 of the distinguished clans, the Shi clan's One Shifeng. Ling Fei Hao gestured with his mouth, indicating to the opposite direction. Lu Muyan glanced over with her peripheral vision and found that the man named Shifeng was leaning against a big tree alone with his eyes closed, without any expression on his face. But she felt a familiar feeling from him. He's an alchemist. Lu Muyan remembered that this familiar feeling originated from the scent of medicine that exuded from him, so she turned her head and asked Ling Fei Hao. She was exceptionally sensitive to smell. Earlier, when she passed by the area where the Shi clan was, she smelled a light medicinal scent that was from Shifeng. Of course. The Shi clan is known for their alchemy across Tianling continent. Obviously he's an alchemist. Ling Fei Hao glanced towards Shifeng and there was a touch of admiration in his eyes. He's now a grade 3 alchemist. 19 years old and already a grade 3 alchemist, isn't that amazing? He's known as the first person in the eastern region to have such high levels of mastery in alchemy in many years. Many alchemists have a weird temper, so it's normal if they're hard to interact with. Lu Muyen herself had interacted with many alchemists, so she naturally knew a bit about how some alchemists didn't like to deal with people. They spent all their time indulged in alchemy. The feeling that Shifeng gave her was as such. This kind of indulgence was different to Huashao's indulgence in smithing. She had seen people like Shifeng before, and he should be one who truly loved the pleasure and accomplishment when spiritual herbs were successfully refined into pills. They pursued perfection and strived to refine the best pill as their lifelong goal. Ling Fei Hao pursed his lips and said, "It's not just because he's an alchemist, he's just got face paralysis too. His face is expressionless all year round. Basically no one's seen him show any excessive emotions." Lu Muyen smiled speechlessly, considering that to be her acquiescence, then asked, "And the last person?" "And the last person's the man in scarlet clothes sitting not far from your teacher. His name is Mu Yi and is the young lord of the Mu clan that's ranked 3rd in the 10 distinguished clans. He's also a grade 3 smith. The most important thing is that he's already comprehended 3 different elemental energy attributes already. Although he's only at peak phase Sword King cultivation base, but it's said that he already has the strength to fight a sword monarch." Ling Fei Hao added. Lu Muyen raised her eyes and glanced in Mu Yi's direction. Coincidentally, their eyes met as he lifted his. The two looked at each other, then each retrieved their gazes. "That person seems to be smiling all the time. How did you judge that he's difficult to interact with?" "It's precisely because he's smiling all the time that he's hard to interact with. Because he's a smiling tiger who treats everyone with politeness, regardless of who it is. It's a different tune to Yi Qing Han's distance, but with the same results 3. Ling Fei Hao said as he raised an eyebrow. Lu Muyen looked at him, amused. "Elder cousin brother, I realize you're really bored." "Pfft, Muyen, so you realized too. He just studies these boring things every day, and he doesn't listen to us no matter what we say." Ling Fei Li beside him couldn't help but laugh aloud. Ling Fei Hao huffed, "I'm just studying my opponents, you guys don't understand." Lu Muyen and Ling Fei Li exchanged a look and saw the smile in each other's eyes. However, she did obtain 2 pieces of information from Ling Fei Hao's short gossip, which could be considered a gain. The several people chatted about the Ling clan and the 10 distinguished clans, then the middle-aged man that was standing with Lan Si suddenly clapped his hands and said, "The trial members of the 10 distinguished clans will gather and set off in a quarter of an hour." Ling Fei Hao revealed a look of reluctance. They had only met for a little bit and now had to separate again. Lu Mubai patted his shoulder with a light smile. "Fei Hao, this time you need to bring glory to the Ling clan. Maybe we'll meet again within the later parts of the trial." "I will." Hearing Lu Mubei's words, Ling Fei Hao nodded solemnly. The current situation of the Ling clan wasn't really optimistic. He and Ling Fei Li were the main force of the Ling clan's trial this time, and they couldn't make the Ling clan lose face. Lu Muyen thought a bit, then took out a few packets of powdered drugs from her interspatial ring and stuffed them in their hands, saying, "These powdered drugs can deal with the demonic beasts and paralyze them for a few breaths. You can use these at critical times. This is the elemental energy replenishing pill 4 which can quickly replenish your elemental energy when you've depleted it." Then she handed 2 more bottles of elemental energy nourishing pills to the 2 as well. She believed that as the main targets of training in the 10 distinguished clans, they wouldn't lack pills with these types of effects. However, there's a shortage of alchemists on this continent, and pills were even scarcer. The people of the Ling clan all treated Lu Muyen very well, so this could be considered her returning the favor. "Wow, Muyen, you actually have so many good things." Ling Fei Hao quickly put the things away and said with big smiles, "Your master really is nice to you." Although she saw that he had misunderstood, but Lu Muyen didn't explain, "You just take good hold of it. After the trial ends, you'll go to the Ling clan to visit elder cousin brother Fei Yang." Speaking of Ling Fei Yang, the eyes of the people in the Ling clan unanimously displayed a bit of sadness. If Ling Fei Yang could also participate in the selection trial this time, they believed he definitely would be able to lead them to win a few more places for the competition. "Don't be discouraged. Elder cousin brother Fei Yang will definitely get better. I believe he also hopes to see you all return successfully." Mu Yan's right. "We must do our best to win glory for the Ling clan. You guys take care too." After separating from Ling Fei Hao and the others, Lu Muyen and Lu Mubai returned to where the students of Yanzhou Kingdom were. He stood in front of Lu Muyen, looked at her expressionlessly and asked, "You are Lu Muyen from the general's mansion of Yanzhou Kingdom?" Lu Muyen watched Shifeng walk over, but she didn't expect that this person would talk to her. Although Shifeng was expressionless, but she could feel that he wasn't hostile. She nodded calmly. Lu Muyen. "Something the matter? I heard that you have a pill called the marrow cleansing pill." Only when Shifeng mentioned pills was there a slight fluctuation in his usually calm eyes. Lu Muyen's expression didn't change. "Yes, but I don't have any more now." "Do you have the pill formula for the marrow cleansing pill? I can exchange it with you for a high-level grade 3 pill formula." This was the first time that Shifeng ever mentioned wanting to make such a transaction with anyone. He was very excited when he heard about the efficacy of the marrow cleansing pill. The pill formula of a pill that had such an effect, defying normalcy, was something no alchemist could refuse. He didn't know whether Lu Muyen would agree to his proposal or not, but he wanted to give it a try regardless. "I don't. The pill formula of the marrow cleansing pill is in my master's hands." Lu Muyen shrugged and expressed helplessness. Recently, many people desired her marrow cleansing pill, but Shifeng seemed to only be interested in the pill formula. If it were someone else, they might be tempted by the deal he proposed. After all, it wouldn't be a disadvantage to exchange a grade 2 pill formula for a grade 3 high-level pill formula. But in her head, there existed unique pill formulas that don't even exist on this continent, so how could she be tempted by Shifeng's grade 3 pill formula? Shifeng appeared to have expected it, but he was still a little bit disappointed. He fell silent for a while, then said to Lu Muyen with a calm expression, "If you want to trade in the future, you can come to the Shi clan to find me." "All right." Lu Muyen didn't refuse either. "Then excuse me," Shifeng said politely before turning to leave. Lu Muyen quickly withdrew her gaze that was on him. This person sure was quite polite. After Shifeng left, she found an empty space and sat down, ignoring the gazes that were cast on her from all directions. She calmly took out a soft and delicious pastry from her interspatial ring to eat. A quarter of an hour later, the trial teams of the 10 distinguished clans quickly gathered and hurried to the boundary between the outer ring and the periphery of the glacial mountain range. Only the people of Yanzhou Kingdom who participated in the trial and the demonic beast corpses scattered around remained. Lan Si also returned to the team. He nipped a piece of tea pastry from Lu Muyen and sent it to his mouth, then said with a smile, "Lu Muyen, you made these yourself?" "Yeah, it's made with spiritual tea." Lu Muyen didn't know from where Lan Si could tell that the pastries were made by herself, but she didn't conceal it either. "It tastes pretty good." Lan Si took another piece and swallowed it. Lu Muyen guessed that he still had something to say, so she didn't respond, and just smiled faintly. "Aren't you going to break through? It's dangerous after we enter the boundary between the outer ring and the inner ring." Lan Si slowly took out a handkerchief and wiped the corners of his mouth and hands, then tossed it away casually. The handkerchief vanished with the wind without a trace. Lu Muyen pursed her lips, "Maybe, during our next rest." The spiritual energy had already reached its peak within her, and her cultivation base had already reached a bottleneck. It was only because it was inconvenient to immediately advance in the glacial mountain range, that's why she had been suppressing her cultivation base. Since Lan Si reminded her so kindly, then she had nothing to hide either. The corners of Lan Si's lips raised, and he didn't say any more. Only after resting for almost 2 hours and after feeling that the distance between them and the team ahead had lengthened, did he tell everyone to rise and keep going. While on the way, Lu Muyen saw that Yunlan wanted to talk to her, but was hesitating, so she said first, "Elder cousin brother has something to tell me?" "It's nothing big, I just wanted to ask, you're very familiar with Yi Qing Han?" "Yeah, we can be considered friends." Lu Muyen nodded with a smile. Yunlan fell silent for a while, then said, "Then, Muyen, can you help me arrange a battle him to exchange pointers?" "Elder cousin brother, why do you insist on exchanging pointers with Yi Qing Han?" Lu Muyen had always been curious as to why Yunlan wanted to chase after Yi Qing Han so persistent. "His skill attributes are the same as mine. Every time I finish fighting with him, they'll always have some comprehensions. It just so happens that my current sword skill is at a bottleneck." Yunlan explained. He wasn't that familiar with Yi Qing Han, and it was only accidental that they fought twice before. If he went to arrange a battle with Yi Qing Han, he feared that he would misunderstand, so he wanted to ask Lu Muyen for help. Lu Muyen smiled in understanding now and said, "So it's like that. Then after the trial, it'll help you ask him." Either way, after the trial's over, she needed to go to the Yi clan for a month, so it was fine to take an extra person. Yi Qing Han presumably wouldn't reject either. Alright, then it'll trouble Muyen. Along the way, they encountered countless attacks from demonic beasts, and even a few tier 4 demonic beasts that lead groups, but they were all avoided. Of course, the effect of Lu Muyen's powdered drug took half the credit. They hurried on with their journey while killing demonic beasts, and 7 days passed. The group of talents arrived at the border between the forest and icy mountains. Lan Si and the other instructors took them to a place at the foot of the icy mountains. There sat a wooden hut, and after entering, a warm current spread towards them. In the middle of the wooden hut, there was a stove, and above the stove rose wisps of steam. There was also a kettle atop of it, and a white-haired old man sat before it. "Yunsang. You're all here. Take a seat." Yunsang raised his eyes and nodded to everyone. Lan Si and the few instructors sat down, then the students all found a random spot to sit. "Lu girl, I heard that you have quite good tea-making skills. Come and make a pot." Lu Muyen lowered her eyes, pulled Lu Mu Bai together to sit beside Yunsang, then said, "Yes." Yunsang smiled, took out a box of spiritual tea from his interspatial ring and handed it to Lu Muyen. Lu Muyen took the spiritual tea, and as soon as she opened the lid, a rich and fragrant smell wafted to her nose. She took a few spoonsful out and started to brew tea. As expected from the imperial teacher of Yanzhou Kingdom, the quality of this spiritual tea was much better than the quality of the tea she obtained from shopkeeper Lu. Lu Muyen's actions that were like moving clouds and flowing water were very pleasing to the eye. Then she listened to Yunsang's order and poured everyone a cup. Yunsang's value of Lu Muyen and his different attitude towards her made most of the other students astounded, and they all reassessed Lu Muyen in their hearts. Yunsang took a sip from his teacup and his eyes revealed some satisfaction, then said rather slowly towards everyone, "Starting today, your trial truly begins. Your first mission. Within 5 days, each of you must go out and kill at least 10 tier 5 demonic beasts and come back. You can team up to complete the mission, or you can snatch it from other people, but you aren't allowed to kill each other. After 5 days, come here to meet us. If you don't reach the number, you will be eliminated automatically. Then a small team from the Imperial family will escort the eliminated people back to the Imperial capital." "Yes, Imperial teacher." Hearing the first task issued, every student participating in the trial here were all feeling ambitious and fervent. By the way, you need to complete this operation alone or in any team. The instructors will no longer accompany you throughout, so pay attention to your own safety. If you die here, then everything will be over for you. I hope that you will all stay alive. Yun-sung drank all the tea in the cup and with a serious expression, rest for a night, and you'll leave early tomorrow morning. Whether you complete the mission or not, 5 days later, before this time, report back. We will follow the instructions of the imperial teacher. After everyone scattered, Lu Mu Yen greeted Lu Mu Bai before walking to sit cross-legged atop a large tree with dense foliage not far from the wooden house. She closed her eyes and the spiritual energy within her body performed a few macrocosmic orbits, placing her whole body and mind in a free and empty state. One night was enough for her to advance. Streams of spiritual force came from all directions and quickly entered her body. A faint green force encircled her dantian, full of vitality. Above her head, in the sky, clusters of spiritual clouds gathered, and lightning bolts descended from the spiritual clouds, striking each of Lu Mu Yan's meridians. The spiritual force continuously tempered her body. Dazzling lights like colored glaze shone down on her through the dense leaves, making the gorgeous, white-clothed young girl appear as if a stunning celestial that had descended, rippling in light and enigmatic as if behind a layer of mist. And this sight naturally stirred everyone who was resting within the wooden hut. They leapt out of the house, looked in Lu Mu Yan's direction, and were completely stunned. This is spiritual force body tempering? A student stammered out. Isn't Lu Mu Yan's talent a bit too strong? She's only advancing but can actually attract spiritual force body tempering. Isn't it that only the legendary constitution can cause such an anomalous phenomenon of heaven and earth? A member of the imperial family said in disbelief. She doesn't have a special or rare constitution, but it said that people with the terminal meridian's constitution are actually extremely talented and heaven-defying. It's just that it's been stopped by their terminal meridians. So after eradicating the terminal meridian's constitution, her talents and aptitudes are gradually revealed. This truly is the so-called interdependence of blessings and misfortunes. The Lu Mu Yen after eradicating the terminal meridian's constitution, compared to the trash from before, are like two different people, The students were discussing constantly, and they all sighed with mixed emotions at Lu Mu Yan's good fortune. Yun-sung, Lan-si and Yun-ji were also standing outside the hut, looking at the anomalous phenomena occurring at that large tree. Every time a spiritual cloud scattered, there would be even more that floated over. It was as if the white-clothed woman shrouded in a colorful glaze had a dantian that was a bottomless pit, incessantly absorbing the spiritual force of heaven and earth. Its speed was truly breathtaking. Imperial teacher, Lu Mu Yen really doesn't have the heavenly spiritual body? Yun-ji looked at Yun-sung in confusion, asking. He had never seen anyone who could attract the spiritual force body tempering anomalous phenomenon when they were advancing. Such an anomalous phenomenon was only a legendary existence, yet he didn't expect to see it today occurring on the infamous trash of the empire. Yun-sung's gaze was deep, and with a rare smile on his face, he sighed. She does indeed not have the heavenly spiritual body, but she has excelling talent that is no less than a heavenly spiritual body. The future of this girl is immeasurable. Then, Yun-sung looked at Lan-si with a serious expression and ordered, no accident can occur to Lu Mu Yen during this trial. Whether it was the master behind Lu Mu Yen, or the excelling cultivation and alchemy talents that she displayed, it all decided that she would be an extraordinary person in the future. The empire could not lose such a talent. I will protect her secretly. Lan-si nodded, but all the missions in the trial need to be completed by herself, so I will not take action until a life or death moment. That is only of course. If she can't even pass such a trial, then it would be a waste of her good aptitude. A sharp glint flashed in Yun-sung's eyes. I just have a feeling that she can win a trial quota this time. I hope so. The gaze that Lan-si cast towards Lu Mu Yen revealed a hint of extreme interest. After a few hours, Lu Mu Yen's spiritual energy soared. She opened her tightly shut eyes and formed a few hand seals before her. The few spiritual clouds that remained in the sky were absorbed by her, and the layer of thin film that blocked her advancement in her dantian was broken by the flooding of elemental energy. Wang! A huge amount of spiritual energy poured into her dantian, and the light green mist expanded in size. Only after performing a few cosmic orbits in her body, was Lu Mu Yan's advancement complete. Feeling the abundant and deep spiritual energy within her, a confident smile rose on her lips. Although she was only at a sword spirit cultivation base, but the spiritual energy in her body wasn't inferior to that of an initial phase Sword King Sword Master. Now she had another layer of guarantee for the upcoming trial mission. Then Lu Mu Yen finished and glanced in the direction of the wooden hut with furrowed brows. There, countless pairs of eyes were staring at her, transfixed, making her feel very helpless. After eradicating her terminal meridian's constitution, her potential talent was even better than those pampered children with special constitutions. And because of her unique flesh refining method, every time she advanced, she would attract the anomalous phenomena of heaven and earth where spiritual clouds would send lightning to temper her body. She suddenly felt a headache because the scene of her advancement was too big. She didn't like being watched and liked to cause trouble even less. But as long as she could refine the foundation establishment pill and take it, after successfully establishing her foundation, she could create a site where it would conceal and isolate the anomalous phenomena of heaven and earth during advancement from the outside world. She ignored the gazes of those people. Right now, she was bound to be questioned if she walked over, so she continued to sit on the tree and close her eyes to rest. It wasn't until when the time came for the mission to start did Lu Mu Yen jump off the branch and leave with Lu Mu Bai and the rest. After separating from the other trial students, Yun Lan took out a beast skin map and carefully checked it. Alan, you actually have a map of the outer ring and inner ring of the glacial mountain range. Xiao Ziyang looked at the beast skin map and said in surprise. Yunlan looked at the beast skin map carefully then explained, this is from my master. After hearing that it was given by Yunlan's master, Xiao Ziyang said excitedly with a smile, then are there marked locations for the tier 5 demonic beasts we need to find? Yunlan's master was that sword sovereign expert of the empire that was currently in closed-door cultivation, and also Yanzhou Kingdom's strongest sword master. It was also because of his support that Yanzhou Kingdom wasn't completely reduced to the ranks of a small country. Yep, there are rough coordinates. Yunlan said to them after confirming a few points on the map, there's a tier 5 ice ape to the east of the mountain and it's also the closest place to us. Let's go there for the mission first, alright. Their little team consisted of Yunlan, Yunjin, Xiao Ziyang, Yunluo, Qi Yixian and the 2 siblings of the Lu clan. Their strengths were relatively prominent among the trial teams. With Yunlan's map, the efficiency would be improved a lot, so it wouldn't be difficult for them to complete the missions. It saved time and trouble. 5 days was enough. Elder cousin brother, are there marked locations of spiritual herbs? Lu Muyen asked in a whisper when she walked beside Yunlan. Yunlan nodded, yes, but not complete. There's only markings for spiritual herbs that are being protected by demonic beasts. Can I take a look? Lu Muyan's eyes lit up like stars. A spiritual herb like the deep orchid would definitely be guarded by a demonic beast. Yunlan smiled, took out the beast skin map from his chest area 1 and handed it to Lu Muyen. Then he pointed to a few places where only one word was written, saying, these are the places. There's the word orchid 2 here, does it represent the deep orchid? Lu Muyen stared at the place marked on the map with the word orchid as her heart skipped a beat. Yes, the deep orchid can only be found in the glacial mountain range. It's extremely rare and precious. According to my master's notes, the demonic beast guarding it is a peak phase tier 5 cold mist Jiao 3. It's also the king of the northwest area. Yunlan was very familiar with the things marked on the map. His master had explained it all to him one by one before coming. Lu Muyen pointed to a few other markings and asked at random, but she noted down the deep orchid's direction and location in her heart. Lu Muyen and her party quickly arrived at the ice ape's cave marked on the map. Sure enough, they felt 3 tier 5 demonic beast auras in the depths of the cave. Outside the cave, groups of low-level ice apes were walking back and forth. Yunlan made a gesture to the others with his hands, took out a long sword, then cut through the air. The others also took out their spirit treasures one by one to sweep through the low-level ice apes outside and in only a short while, they made their way deep into the cave. Roar! Their fight also attracted the attention of the 3 ice ape kings deep in the cave that rushed out, beating their chests. Lu Muyen looked at one of the ice ape kings that was more than 3 meters high, and fighting spirit rose in her eyes. After the spiritual force body tempering and advancing to a sword spirit, her Bodhis toughness also rose a level, and the flesh refining method rose a layer too. This initial phase tier 5 demonic beast was the perfect opponent for to practice against right now. Leave that shortest one to me. Lu Muyen said as she rolled her fists. Xiao Ziyang rolled his eyes at her and said, that's a tier 5 demonic beast. Even if you did advance to sword spirit, you don't need to be so wild and arrogant, right? Lu Muyen glanced at him lightly, it's not like I'm an idiot like you. After speaking, she didn't wait for anyone else to say anything, and with a flash, she just raised her fist and charged over. She leapt up and with bare hands, directly greeting the ice ape that charged towards her. Boom boom. The two collided. The ice ape stumbled back a few steps, while Lu Muyen was directly slammed into the wall opposite, shaking down a lot of rubble. However, her face not only didn't have the slightest discoloration, but instead, her fighting spirit grew more and more intense. Her exquisite and gorgeous face was dyed with a layer of faint red, then with a leap, she once again, in midair, punched towards the ice ape. The Ice Ape King had already developed intelligence, so it was completely angered by such provocation from a human that was one stage lower than itself. It beat its chest and roared a few times, then similarly clenched its hands to greet that tender fist. Bang! The 2 fists met, but neither side was jolted back this time. They continued to fight using the most primitive physical combat method, throwing punches at each other one by one. Is Lu Muyen still a woman? Xiao Ziyang watched that petite and delicate woman collide and bombard that tall, thick ice ape, completely stupefied. And yet she wasn't at a disadvantage at all. The traces of wildness, arrogance, and that domineering manner she revealed completely startled him. Yunjin couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth. He stood beside Xiao Ziyang with folded arms as his eyes revealed some interest. How violent. But I like it. Xiao Ziyang held his forehead. Were there still any normal people around? He glanced around. Yunlan and Yunluo were practicing against one, Lu Mubai faced another alone, Qi Yixian was cleaning up the few low-level ice apes that they had missed, and Lu Muyen was just currently fighting gleefully. He couldn't help but poke Yunjin's arm and said, is it really fine for us to just stand here and watch the fight? What's wrong with that? Those who have the abilities do more work. Just let them fight first. Their hands were itching for a long time. Yunjin raised an eyebrow indifferently, even if we want to intervene, there's nowhere to be of use right now, so just watch. Xiao Ziyang also realized that Yunjin's words were reasonable, so he shrugged and continued to watch the battle. From time to time, he would even nitpick Lu Muyan's fight, but he couldn't help but feel admiration towards her rise within him. The fight developed into a completely one-sided battle. Lu Mu Bai easily beheaded the Ice Ape King he battled, while Yun Lan and Yun Luo also killed the other Ice Ape without using their full strength. Seeing that the other people's battles were already over, Lu Mu Yen didn't delay any more time either. She took 2 steps back, moved her fingers, and one immediately saw thin red threads of elemental energy condensation reveal itself from the Ice Ape's thin fur, displayed in an octagonal shape. This was the fire elemental energy array that she quietly buried on the Ice Ape's body every time her body physically clashed with the Ice Ape's. If she wanted to kill her opponent with her physical strength alone, she still couldn't do it for the time being. Of course, if she could do another spiritual force body tempering, then she could do it. Lu Mu Yen murmured a few phrases and activated the fire elemental energy in the array. The octagonal-shaped red threads began to move quickly and gradually tightened. A moment later, the red thread firmly bound the limbs of the Ice Ape, trapping it in place for the time being. At the same time, the eye of the array lit up brightly in red, transforming into streams of light that shot out directly towards the center of the Ice Ape's eyebrows. The Ice Ape wailed, then its huge body fell heavily to the ground, without a single breath remaining. The few people that were originally merely standing, watching her fight, were now all stunned. When did she arrange this trick? They didn't notice it at all. They only knew the constant bombardment of bodies between her and the Ice Ape, but they didn't expect that she had long planted a second means to win. Mu Yen, what was the matter with that trick you just used? Elemental energy condensation is really this powerful? Yun Jin watched Lu Mu Yan's battle from start to finish but didn't notice that she used elemental energy condensation. The elemental energy condensation of a sword skill was what made the Yi clan famous, but it didn't have such potent, silent, and obscure powers. Lu Mu Yen collected her spoils, and didn't conceal either. This is an array formed by elemental energy condensation. Those thin red threads had long destroyed the meridians in the limbs of that Ice Ape. When I decide to kill it, it can also play a restraining role. She was most famous in the spirit world, and not for her alchemy skills, but for her arrays. She had thoroughly researched all types of arrays and were highly adept in them. If her strength allowed her, she could even personally arrange a few ancient great arrays. Even if a sword sovereign expert entered, she could promise that they wouldn't be able to exit. Although at the cultivation base of a great sword master, she could condense the elemental energy within their body, but it wasn't that powerful. However, after entering the sword spirit stage, she could use many different skills. An elemental energy array could also be quietly assembled, making one hard to defend against it. It made fights a lot easier. Except she was currently cultivating the cultivation skills of the immortal cultivation world, so advancing in the levels of a sword master just couldn't allow her to use certain talents. Only when she established her foundation, formed a core, formed a nascent soul and so forth, like in her previous life, could she exhibit her strengths. Aren't arrays only able to be arranged with array flags and array tools? Yun Luo asked in surprise. Most arrays do require array flags and array tools, but they can also be constructed with elemental energy. But not everyone can use elemental energy to build an array. Lu Mu Yen stretched out her hand, and a red, octagonal elemental energy array was easily constructed by her. She continued, building an array with elemental energy not only requires one to do 3 things at once, but also requires the talent to enter a free and empty state at any time, and make a sketch of the array in their heart. The heart array was a secret manual that had long been lost in the ancient times. She only knew it because she accidentally discovered it in an ancient cultivator's cave. In the immortal cultivation world, there wouldn't be more than 10 people that could use spiritual energy to build an array. In a place like Tianling continent where everything was lacking, it was probably even more impossible to find a second person who could use the heart array. After listening to Lu Mu Yan's explanation, Yun Luo and the rest were all speechless. In the end, wasn't it that it required talent to be able to do it? They sure didn't have the ability to achieve a free and empty state of mind at any time, nor do 3 things at once. Lu Mu Yen was just specifically attacking them now. It only took a few months for her to advance from an advanced phase sword novice to a sword spirit. This sort of speed really made them, who were the so-called geniuses, yet used more than a decade, feel ashamed. She also only used the cultivation base of a sword spirit to defeat a tier 5 ice ape that was equivalent to an initial phase sword king strength, and not only used elemental energy condensation, but could also use elemental energy to build an array to kill her opponent. These methods had never been heard of before. She slowly revealed to them the edges of her talents, but every time they thought that her strength and the means she displayed had already exceeded their imagination, she could attack them again with reality. Translated product by Mayar Come True. After hunting the tier 5 ice apes, the group followed the closest path on the marked map and swept up and beheaded the tier 5 demonic beasts required for the mission. 3 days later, on a glacial plain, green trees were dotted among the vast expanse of white, and a group of cold vultures flew on the clearing around the trees. When Yun Zmo and 2 other teams of students rushed to the ice field, wanting to kill the tier 5 cold vultures that they received information of, they saw a large group of cold vultures currently fighting a few people. Among the few people led by Lu Mu Bai, 2 of them cleaned the low-level cold vulture on the periphery, while 4 of them faced 4 tier 5 cold vulture kings among the cold vultures. And the white-clothed woman currently in battle with a tier 5 cold vulture king unexpectedly stunned them. She was agile and fast, sped swiftly beneath the wings of the demonic beast, blasted and slammed with her fists covered in elemental energy, used her body to fight head-to-head with the tier 5 cold vulture king, and yet she wasn't at all at a disadvantage. Sword masters were more adept in long-range combats because their boda's toughness couldn't be compared to a demonic beast's, so they were weak in close-quarters combat. But Lu Mu Yen personally let them realize that the body of a human sword master could also be as strong and tough as a demonic beast. That's Lu Mu Yen. Ji Han-soo, who stood beside Yun Zmo, didn't conceal the shock in his eyes. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, had absolutely never believed that Lu Muyan's body was so tough. Yun Zmo's cold eyes deepened. She should have practiced a flesh-refining skill. But to be able to combat a tier 5 demonic beast with the cultivation base of a sword spirit master, and still appear to be winning, she indeed has her own strengths. The body of a human sword master, compared to a demonic beast, was extremely fragile. A sword master once developed a flesh-refining method to make up for this shortcoming, but unfortunately, these sorts of skills were not only rare to find, but it also wasn't suitable for everyone to cultivate. He guessed that Lu Muyan probably obtained a flesh-refining method and trained in it successfully. Otherwise it'd be impossible to have the ability and physical quality to fight against demonic beasts directly. Could it be the effect of the marrow cleansing pill? A fiery light flashed across Ji Han-soo's eyes. Yun Zmo pondered for a bit before disagreeing. Even the most heaven-defying pill couldn't cleanse the marrow and refine the body. The strength she displayed doesn't seem to be improved because she took a pill. But it's undeniable that the marrow cleansing pill indeed turned the famous waste of the imperial capital into a genius who's not at all inferior to you now. Ji Han-soo held a firm belief in the efficacy of the marrow cleansing pill. Recently, the Ji clan was also secretly negotiating with the Lu clan, only hoping to successfully obtain the marrow cleansing pill. Yun Zmo's eyes displayed a look of disagreement, but he didn't say more. Presumably, there were a lot of people that thought of Lu Muyan in that way, but he guessed that it was actually because this woman hid her talents well. He firmly believed that it was simply impossible for a person to change so drastically due to the effects of a pill alone. After eradicating the terminal meridian's constitution, two of the most important factors that Lu Muyan relied on to achieve what she did definitely must be her own extraordinary talents and own efforts. The jealousy in Yun Ge's eyes were inadvertently revealed and was quickly caught by Qi Luxiang, who stood not far away. She lowered her eyes to cover up the changing emotions in her eyes and thought, this time, she'd definitely not allow Lu Muyan to return, and would help the Gu clan get rid of this huge nuisance and trouble. The fight remained one-sided. After Lu Muyan sweat to her heart's content, and her body and mind were refreshed, she arranged an elemental energy killing array to trap the Cold Vulture King. The Cold Vulture King was unwilling to reveal weakness. It was trapped, but it gathered all its demonic energy on its sharp beak, raised its head, then lowered it, pecking towards the weakest part of Lu Muyan's head. Lu Muyan's eyes grew cold. A layer of glaze-like jade color enveloped her hand. She quickly backed away a few steps, then leapt forward, and her right fist that carried boundless elemental energy was directly inserted into the area where the crystal core resided, wrenching it right out. Gah! The Cold Vulture King's eyes bulged, and its breath stopped abruptly in its last call. After putting away the Cold Vulture King's corpse, Lu Muyan walked to Yunlan and the other side, and said with a smile, mission complete. Lu Muyan, you little monster. You completed your first trial mission in only 3 days. Xiao Ziyang pursed his lips and said, unreconciled. Except there was a smile of admiration in his eyes. Lu Muyan raised an eyebrow, stretched out her hand and patted his shoulder. Then her eyes curved into a crescent shape as she smiled, brother, I've got to remind you that you've still got 7 demonic beasts left to complete the mission, but there's only 2 days left. The corner of Xiao Ziyang's mouth twitched. This was precisely a caustic friend that was here just to take a jab at his heart. The others couldn't help but smile. Then seeing the people on the opposite side walk towards them, Yunlan's eyes deepened, and he greeted Yun Zmo, young royal uncle. Yun Zmo's cold eyes didn't reveal much emotion. He nodded and asked, have you all completed your missions? We're almost done. Yunlan turned the conversation on its head and asked with a smile, I suppose that young royal uncle must have completed your trial missions, right? Not yet. There's still 3 more left until completion. Yun Zmo answered indifferently. I say Yunlan, aren't you all a bit unkind? Ji Han-soo stepped forward and with a smile, as if joking, said, you guys always intercept and kill the tier 5 demonic beasts. You should at least leave some soup for us brothers when you're eating the meat. Xiao Ziyang still remembered how Ji Han-soo acted against Lu Mu Bai for Yungu earlier, so he said, well, who told you guys to always be slower than us? Even I haven't had any soup, so don't you guys count on having any either. Oh, isn't this alchemist Xiao? You still need to drink soup? With your identity as an alchemist, you can just beckon and call, and wouldn't there be a lot of sword masters who will come and hack through brambles and thorns and sweep a bunch of tier 5 demonic beasts for you? A young man beside Ji Han-soo who wore fine and splendid robes sneered, with ridicule in his voice. Xiao Ziyang choked. He did indeed have some power to rally helpers back in the imperial capital because of his identity as an alchemist, but during the trial in the glacial mountain range, everyone was a child favored by the heavens. So who would help him sweep up tier 5 demonic beasts for a few pills? The anger in his heart rose steadily. The young man across from him who spoke was also his enemy in the imperial capital, so to be ridiculed like this, he truly couldn't swallow the anger. Just when he was about to resolve this using force, his arm was pulled by Lu Muyan. Alchemist Xiao, this miss is willing to hack through brambles and thorns to sweep up a bunch of tier 5 demonic beasts for you. Lu Muyan's eyes curved as they carried a brightness and continued, let alone drinking soup, let's not even leave a single demonic beast fur for these eyesores. Alright. Xiao Ziyang felt the warmth from his arms, and his heart also warmed up. Lu Muyan truly was loyal. Lu Muyan, who are you saying is an eyesore? That young man who had ridiculed Xiao Ziyang glared at her furiously. Lu Muyen retracted her hand on Xiao Ziyang's arm, picked up a strand of hair on her shoulder to play with, then raised her eyes carelessly, saying, "Of course it's whoever answers is the eyesore." This person was Gu Yanran's admirer. He hadn't ridiculed and bullied her any less when they met before, and now he was mocking Xiao Ziyang. Lu Muyen's lips curled up into a cold arc. Want to complete the mission to kill tier 5 demonic beasts? Humph, with her here, this person could dream on. Translated product by Mayar Come True. Previous chapter. Hearing Lu Muyen's arrogant words, the people around the young boy frowned unconsciously. Lu Muyen, don't think that you're amazing just because you're able to kill a tier 5 demonic beast, and you even want to not leave a single demonic beast fur for us. If you really have that ability, then show it to us, why only talk about it? Yungu looked unhappy, then mocked, let's take a bet to see just who will lose. Lu Muyen's aunt in the imperial palace, as the empress, already suppressed her concubine mother. Who expected that now the Lu clan's little trash's strength also suppressed her? With new grudges and old grudges, it made Yungu feel exceptional disgust towards Lu Muyen. Lu Muyen chuckled and raised an eyebrow, that's what you said. Was this stupid woman really an elite raised by the imperial family? She not only wasn't astute nor subtle, but also got angry immediately when provoked. Lu Muyen couldn't help but cast a sympathetic glance at Ji Han-su. With such a pig teammate one as his betrothed, Ji Han-su's entire life would definitely never be boring. In fact, she didn't know that Yunge's concubine mother was given the cold shoulder by Yun Tianchen because she once acted arrogantly towards the empress and didn't give her any face, relying on the fact that she was highly favored by the emperor. As Yunge's talent was pretty good, she was sent to cultivate in the imperial family's secret grounds. Plus, she was the princess of the imperial family, so many people were willing to sell her some favors, and from a young age, she was also very distant from the complexities of the imperial palace and hadn't interacted with a lot of secrets. That's why it raised her to be such a simplistic, stupid, and self-centered person. Ji Han-su naturally caught Lu Muyen's blatant sympathetic gaze and he couldn't help but hold his forehead. He was actually being sympathized and gloated by the once most famous trash of the imperial capital. But looking at his betrothed's disdainful, nasty face, he couldn't help but want to wipe some tears of sympathy for himself as well. He couldn't help but assist Yungu last time because of their relationship, but now she was acting stupid again. He really didn't have the heart to care about it anymore. After returning, he must properly mention it to the superiors of the clan. It was best to annul this engagement. Lu Muyen, who can't talk big? Then well, wait and see how you keep us from not even being able to touch demonic beast fur. The young man sneered and said with extreme disdain. Lu Muyen gave the two a like in her heart too. They sure knew exactly what to do. After completing the mission, the 2 days left would be filled with idleness and boredom. Since it didn't really occur often that an opportunity to prank would arrive at the door by itself, she'd play with them a bit then. Alright. You two just prepare to pack your bags and return to the imperial capital after 2 days then. Lu Muyen smiled devilishly and the arrogance in her eyes was undisguised. Humph, what big talk. Just wait and see. Yungu also couldn't help but snort, turned around and dragged Ji Han-su with the rest, leaving the ice field. She wanted to find tier 5 demonic beasts before Lu Muyen and the others and let that woman lose face entirely. The people from the other small team glanced at each other and followed. They were all sword spirit strengths, so if they wanted to successfully complete the task, they had to rely on Ji Han-su. Yun Zimo's obsidian-like eyes were encircled with a layer of unidentifiable light. He took a deep look at Lu Muyen, addressed Yunlan, then turned to leave. However, his route was the opposite of Yunge's group. He had a feeling that if he followed Yungu, his mission would be difficult to complete. After all the people who had intruded left, worry rose in Xiao Ziyang's eyes. Lu Muyen, even if you want to help me retaliate against them, you didn't need to boast so wildly, right? If you let them kill a tier 5 demonic beast, then we'd both lose our faces terribly. Although he said this, he didn't have any intent on blaming her. On the contrary, there was an unprecedented excitement in his heart, as if he was going to do something amazingly terribly bad with Lu Muyen. He didn't know why, but when it came to Lu Muyen's words, he actually felt a sense of unquestioning belief. He really was spending a bit too much time with this violent woman. Lu Muyen looked at him askance as if he were an idiot. You're the only one that'll lose face, it's got nothing to do with me. After a pause, she added, let's go quickly. Don't always think about playing dirty tricks, you still have to kill 7 tier 5 demonic beasts to complete the mission. Xiao Ziyang's forehead was full of creases. Was it impossible to speak nicely now? It was obvious that she wanted to play dirty tricks to prank people, so what did it have to do with him? Not to mention, could she not always mention the 7 demonic beasts situation and poke his sore spots? You guys that have finished the mission, will you be going back first, or follow us to prank people? A naughty smile rose on Lu Muyen's lips. Lu Muyen made it no secret that she was not a virtuous maiden, and she definitely wasn't a good person. But such a straightforward temperament just so happened to be something the others appreciated. Since Muyen is so confident, we naturally have to go and join in on the fun. Yunlan revealed a light smile, and he couldn't help but feel that his heart was dyed with a layer of joy as he looked at the woman in front of him with her bright eyes, lively and adorable. Yunjin loved to watch the excitement, so he blinked at Lu Muyen playfully and said with a smile, they can't touch demonic beast fur, but me, Ziong and Yixian's mission demonic beasts should be fine, right? He and Xiao Ziong's strength was at the bottom of the group, so they still had to kill 4 tier 5 demonic beasts to complete the mission. Qi Yixian still had 2 more, while the others had all completed their missions. Naturally. At the same time as making trouble, it's also for you guys to quickly complete your missions. Lu Muyen rolled her eyes at Yunjin. He could even ask such a stupid question. Sure enough, after spending a long time with Xiao Ziong, his IQ was also dragged down. Lu Muyen, you're sure loyal. When we return to the imperial capital, your brother will look after you. Xiao Ziong wanted to reach out to hang his arm around Lu Muyen's shoulder to express that they were good brothers, but was deliberately blocked by Qi Yixian. Let's go to and find the tier 5 demonic beasts before them. Qi Yixian said deeply. He felt very uncomfortable right now. He was delightedly surprised that Lu Muyen once again shocked and amazed him, and kept attracting his gaze, making his heart beat uncontrollably. But at the same time, he also hoped to hide her deeply so that she couldn't be coveted by other men. The tier 5 demonic beasts marked on Yunlan's map had basically been cleaned up by them, and the few that were left were rather far away. Xiao Ziong couldn't help but ask again, while walking, how do we find tier 5 demonic beasts without a map? Follow Yungu and the others? Then he immediately knocked his head and laughed, saying, that's right. We can follow them. The moment we encounter a tier 5 demonic beast, we can just rush over and kill it first. Do you think Ji Han's Sword King cultivation base is just an accessory? Lu Muyen looked at Xiao Ziong wordlessly. Besides, what we want to do is play tricks on them, so naturally they need to personally watch how we don't leave a single fur for them. Do you think it's possible to do that if we try to snatch and kill the demonic beast after following them? Then what should we do? You must have some idea, right? Xiao Ziong saw the brilliance in Lu Muyen's eyes and knew immediately that this woman was plotting again. Luckily he wasn't her enemy, otherwise he really would be played to death. Lu Muyen raised an eyebrow and smiled in a dominating manner. That's only natural. Not only do I want them to be eliminated in the first mission, but I also want them to personally witness how we put all the mission items into our own pockets. Seeing her confident, gorgeous smile, all of them unanimously lit a candle 3 in their hearts for those who offended Lu Muyen. Translated product by May Are Come True. 1. As they hurried along their journey, Lu Muyen released Mo Yen who was cultivating in the spirit pet bangle. For that boring bet, you actually bother me when I'm cultivating? Mo Yan's indifferent eyes displayed a bit of displeasure. Although he didn't like to stay in the spirit pet bangle, but he could only endure it in order to not waste a single moment cultivating. Yet who knew that this woman would bother him for such trivial matters? Lu Muyen held Mo Yen in her arms and poked him on the back, telepathically saying, do you still want that pill refined from a tier 5 crystal core? If you don't work hard, you want to take it for nothing? Then she said twaddled on, don't you know this is also because I want to help you collect more crystal cores to refine into pills? Since you don't cherish it, then go back to your spirit pet bangle and continue to cultivate. Mo Yen took a deep breath. This woman really was good. There's a tier 5 snow leopard 500 meters ahead of that group of people. Lu Muyen's eyes were full of smiles, and she continued poking at the soft and warm little beast in her arms. Now that's right, being tactful is the solid principle. Mo Yen didn't bother to talk to her anymore. After pointing the way, he just let Lu Muyen hold him as he closed his eyes to rest. With Mo Yan's precise instructions, Lu Muyen took Yunlan and the others around to a small path and circled in front of Yungu and the others. Sure enough, after 500 meters, on a low mound, they found traces of a tier 5 snow leopard. What are you three waiting for? First come first serve, don't you want to complete your mission? Lu Muyen leaned on a big tree, pointed to the snow leopard not far away and looked at the 3 that hadn't completed their missions indolently. She had hunted and killed 10 initial phase tier 5 demonic beasts already, and also gradually found that feeling of doing something to her heart's content. So it wasn't that she didn't want to help the 3 of them kill the demonic beasts, but she hoped that they would grow up on their own. The trial mission of slaying tier 5 demonic beasts a level above them wasn't just a test for those who participated in the trial, but it was also to hone their combat skills and survivability. The 3 of them were dazed for a moment when they heard Lu Muyen's words, then 2 figures quickly dashed out and went straight for the snow leopard. Xiao Ziong, who was a half beat behind, cursed, then also charged over quickly. The 3 men besieged and scrambled for that one snow leopard. In the end, it was Yunjin who played a trick that caused the other 2 to be half steps slower when they were about to kill the snow leopard, and successfully scooped out the snow leopard's crystal core. He held it in his hands and waved it at Lu Muyen and the rest, a face of smugness. And it was at this moment that Yungu and her team also found this low mound. But when they saw the snow leopard's crystal core in Yunjin's hands, their complexion wasn't very good. Lu Muyen, didn't you say that you wouldn't let us even touch the fur of a tier 5 demonic beast? Why is the person who killed the demonic beast my royal elder brother? Weren't you quite capable before? Yungu saw that the person who slayed the snow leopard wasn't Lu Muyen, so her heart relaxed, and she couldn't help but ridicule. Lu Muyen sneered, did I ever say that I'll do it myself? Why should I bother exerting my mental effort when someone could exert themselves instead? I'm not as stupid as you. Yungu trembled with anger. Lu Muyen, that bitch actually dared say she was stupid, it was truly unforgivable. Except, she only got to say one word and was stopped by Ji Han-su behind her, whose brows were furrowed. Lu Muyen did only say that she wouldn't even allow them to touch a demonic beast, but she didn't say that she would do it herself. What's the use of arguing about these things now? He became more and more angry with Yungu within. Enough. Now isn't the time to argue. Let's hurry up and find the next tier 5 demonic beast. No one in the 2 teams had completed their first trial mission yet. If they followed this trend, they could really be eliminated. Ji Han-su intensely regretted why he would team up with Yungu. The worries in Ji Han's heart, Yungu naturally thought of too. She sure didn't want to be eliminated in the first round of the trial mission, so she could only glare at Lu Muyen unwillingly and say ruthlessly, Lu Muyen, just you wait. I await your esteemed self one anytime. Lu Muyen chuckled nonchalantly. A character like Yungu couldn't even compare to Gu Yanran. She really didn't pay attention to her, and she didn't have time to play with her even more. If she wanted to cause trouble, then she'll just accompany her whenever necessary. The young man also glared at Lu Muyen. Trash, just you want and see. Hearing the word trash, Lu Muyen's pretty eyes narrowed. In the following 2 days, a similar scenario was acted out in the boundary of the outer ring and inner ring in the glacial mountain range time and again. Just when the trial students of the 2 teams found a trail of their target tier 5 demonic beast, Lu Muyen and her group would always be ahead of them 1 step, not more nor less, and every time the groups arrived, the demonic beast would always just happen to be slayed. Indeed, not a single fur was left for them. Lu Muyen, have you played enough games? Ji Han-su changed from his usual cheerful laughter to an expression that carried slight grimness as he looked at the dead demonic beasts on the ground. Lu Muyen wrapped her fingers around a strand of shiny black hair, raised an eyebrow and said, didn't your people let me do this? Of course it's not enough. Lu Muyen, those 2 offended you, but we haven't. Isn't it too much of you to keep robbing our target demonic beasts? The leader of the other group of students from the Empire Academy couldn't help but step forward and say. Lu Muyen tilted her head to look at Xiao Ziong and asked, did I kill that demonic beast? No, Yun Jin killed it. Xiao Ziong shook his head cooperatively. Lu Muyen shrugged to the group of people not far away and said, did you hear that? The one who snatched your target demonic beast was Yun Jin, so what's it got to do with me? Both teams were all rather angered by that careless, unscrupulous tone. It was true that she wasn't the one who killed the demonic beasts. But making the connection with the powdered drugs from before that could make demonic beasts unable to move temporarily, prepared by Lu Muyen, they all concluded that it was definitely Lu Muyen's masterpiece for them to always, coincidentally, be that 1 step ahead in finding a tier 5 demonic beast. Yun Jin's eyelids couldn't help but twitch, and he didn't know whether to cry or laugh. Just who was the one who ordered him to go fight before? Lu Muyen, do you really want everyone in our 2 teams to be eliminated? Ji Han-su suppressed the anger in his chest and calmly asked as he looked at Lu Muyen. Lu Muyen swept across Ji Han-su with a look as if saying he was stupid, then said slowly, I've got no grievances against you guys, why do I want to eliminate everyone in your 2 teams? I'm betting with them, not you guys. Isn't it fine if you just don't follow them? After hearing her say that, the rest also had a revelation, and they secretly blamed Yungu and the young boy. The 2 thought they were so amazing and wanted to gamble with Lu Muyen before, but now they were all being held back because of the 2. Lu Muyen caught the looks on the people opposite, then reminded them kindly with a smile, there's only 1 day remaining in the trial. You all better hurry up. Neither of the 2 teams could do anything to her, and they couldn't delay any more time even more. In order to complete the trial mission, they all regrouped, then quickly went to other places to look for tier 5 demonic beasts. Ji Han-su also left Yungu who was pestering him, quickly leaving with the other 2 members of the imperial family. According to Mo Yan's prompt, there weren't many tier 5 demonic beasts within the few thousand li nearby, and those that were left were all at advanced phase or peak phase tier 5 strength. These people would still have a fierce battle left to fight. With Yungu and the young man's strength, the possibility of hunting down tier 5 demonic beasts individually was practically zero. Lu Muyen also lost the interest to continue playing with Yungu and the boy. Xiao Ziong and the other 2 had also completed their missions, so there was no need for them to continue into the inner ring's border anymore. The 2 teams just now came quickly and went quickly. Not even a cup of tea's worth of time later, only Yungu and that young boy were left. Lu Muyen snapped her fingers and addressed Yun Jin and the others, let's return and hand in the mission. Xiao Ziong's eyes swept across the 2 people whose expressions were exceptionally ugly and asked, Muyen, we're not going to compete with them anymore? Lu Muyen glanced at him faintly, do you think they can deal with a tier 5 demonic beast with their strength? Xiao Ziong looked at the 2 again. They were both sword spirit strength, so he shook his head, naturally it's impossible for the 2 to deal with tier 5 demonic beasts. He was an advanced phase sword spirit, but when he was slaying the 10 tier 5 demonic beasts earlier for the mission, he used items like pills, spirit treasures, talismans and the like that he had on him. From time to time, he even had to rely on Lu Muyen and the others to barely be able to complete the mission. As for the 2 opposite, if they were to rely on their own strength, they definitely wouldn't be able to complete the mission. Exactly, so why waste time with them here? Lu Muyen walked towards a small path with Mo Yen in her arms, then made a hand gesture to the others, let's go and hand in the mission. Alright. Yunlan and the others also ignored the existence of Yungu and the boy and left together. With tears of grievance and resentment in Yunge's eyes, she took a deep breath and said to the young man beside her, we're just going to let them go like this? Otherwise what do we do? The 2 of us aren't their opponents at all. The young boy had always been the master of deceiving good and fearing evil. Even if he secretly despised in his heart right now, he didn't dare cause trouble for Lu Muyen in front of her. After he returned to the imperial capital, he had many ways to find the ground he lost today. Yungu stomped her foot and glared at Lu Muyen's back that had long disappeared, then turned around and headed in the direction Ji Han-su went. She was also considered an expert when she was training in the Empire Academy's secret grounds, but only after entering the glacial mountain range, did she realize she was, in actual fact, the very bottom of existence, and could only rely on Ji Han-su. So if she didn't want to be eliminated, she could only go find Ji Han-su. The young man gritted his teeth and followed in Yunge's footsteps to find Ji Han-su and the others together, but in his heart he had the decision to give up the trial. With his strength, it would be as hard as climbing the heavens if he wanted to seize one of the 6 places of the trial. Lu Mu Yen took the few people around waves after waves of demonic beasts, and it took only half a day to return to the wooden hut for the trial mission. Mu Yen, your fire cloud mixture is really powerful. Not only can it find spiritual stones and spiritual herbs, it can also help avoid demonic beasts at least hundreds of meters away. It was really worth that much ink gold coins back then. Yun Jin couldn't help but sigh with mixed emotions the moment he entered the wooden hut. Lu Mu Yan's eyes were truly sharp. She could even see the potential in such a spirit pet. She was truly abnormal. A smile rose on Lu Mu Yan's lips and she stretched out her hand to smooth Mo Yan's fur who was in her arms. That's only natural, how can my spirit pet be lacking? Xiao Ziong rolled his eyes. Lu Mu Yan, I've discovered that you really don't have any of the reservations that girls have. So what? Lu Mu Yan raised an eyebrow. Why must she have the reservedness that girls should have? Even if I have a reserved side, I shouldn't show it to you. Then whole you show it to? Xiao Xiong smiled like a curious little baby at Lu Mu Yan as he glanced at Qi Yi Xian in his peripheral vision and found that he had stiffened. Upon hearing Xiao Ziong's question, Yunlan and the others also curiously awaited Lu Mu Yan's answer. Lu Mu Yan took out a pot of spiritual tea and began to brew it. Her hand movements were elegant and methodical, and only after a while did she say slowly, of course I'll show it to my future husband. Pfft, Lu Mu Yan, you really have no shame. Just look at how old you are and you're already thinking about your future husband. Xiao Ziong laughed aloud. Lu Mu Yan's beautiful eyes lightly narrowed at Xiao Ziong, causing him to shudder. He immediately shut his mouth. When this woman plotted against someone, it came in sets. It was best that he didn't offend her. Then what kind of husband does Mu Yan want to find in the future? Yun Jin approached Lu Mu Yan and asked with a smile. Lu Mu Yan was dazed for a moment. She seemed to have never thought about what sort of man she wanted as a husband in the future. In her past life, she was pursued by numerous men, as if schools of cushioned carps in a river won, but there was no appearance of a man that could make her heart beat. She unconsciously rubbed the ice bangle on her wrist and a red figure surfaced in her mind. Then she chuckled and shook her head. Why did she think of that devilish man? Her originally confused eyes instantly regained their clarity, and she said with a light smile, who knows about things in the future? Let's talk about it when I meet someone who can make my heart beat for him. Her words were also equivalent to rejecting all the men present here. Although unintentional, but it had made the few, aside from Xiao Ziong and Lu Mu Bai, who were originally in high spirits, downcast. Lu Mu Yan had actually faintly noticed that Yunlan and Yun Jin were both slightly interested in her, but she didn't feel any attraction to them, so it was impossible to accept them. As for Qi Yi Xian, it was even more impossible. For a while, the atmosphere in the wooden hut was a little gloomy. Lu Mu Bai drank his tea as he stroked the blue and white porcelain teacup, the corners of his mouth curled up. His younger sister was just too outstanding. He didn't want to let her marry out so early either. Though he wondered just who could be worthy enough for his younger sister who was like a pearl like a jewel in the future. Around an hour later, Yun Song walked in from outside the wooden hut. Seeing these people sitting inside, he wasn't surprised either. After examining their respective demonic beast corpses, he assigned the second trial mission to them. Wonderful, congratulations for successfully completing your first trial mission. Yun Song's wrinkled old face revealed a rare smile. You don't need to wait for the others. You guys can just start the second trial mission. Then he distributed a list for everyone, filled with many words. After the several people read through the list, he said, this is the mission list for each one of you. You must find at least 2/3 of the items to pass and advance to the next part of the trial. Less than 2/3, then you'll be eliminated and sent back to the imperial capital. Xiao Ziong stretched out his head and studied Yunlan and Lu Mu Yan's lists, and found that they were all different. He raised his head and asked Yun Song, Imperial teacher, why do we all have different mission lists to complete? Of course your missions lists are all different. Although I said that you can still team up for the second trial mission, but I didn't say that your missions would be the same. Yun Song swept over them with a look of fun in his eyes, then said, originally, the duration of this mission is still 5 days, but you all have completed the first trial mission a day in advance, so we'll give you an extra day's time. 6 days later, return here to hand in your mission. Let me remind you that if you form a team to look for items on this list one by one, then at most you could only complete the missions of 2 people. So this mission tests your individual survivability and adaptive skill. Then doesn't that mean we can't form a team anymore? Yun Jin furrowed his brows. There's so many mission items on this list, and there's no marked map, so how do we find them? Whether you want to form a team or not is up to you, but it's only efficient if you complete this mission individually. So think about it yourself. Yun Song smiled profoundly. As for how you'll search for the items on the paper, it all depends on your respective abilities, otherwise do you think it's that easy to obtain one of the 6 places? Alright, after you prepare, you can start your mission. As soon as Yun Song finished speaking, in a flash, he disappeared from the wooden hut. Lu Mu Yan held the mission list in her hands, and there was a smile brimming in the bottom of her eyes. The opportunity to individually go search for the deep orchid had come. At the same time, a man who wore a silver mask and flamboyant red clothes also took 2 people into the boundary between the outer ring and inner ring of the glacial mountain range.